How about them Backrooms, huh? I wanted to record a video, not right after seeing the movie, but I've been avoiding reading anything about it, what other people think. So I just want to get this out there because I want to start reading up on what people think about the Backrooms. But I kind of want to do it unfettered. Of course, I've had some conversations about the movie. Yeah, and I want to do it before it moves too far away in the back of my mind. And I'm starting to misremember stuff. Because I'm not in my orange turtleneck, so it's kind of like when I'm not in my orange turtleneck, I'm not necessarily in educational mode. Although, to be fair, in my last video, the spoofs and goofs kind of had the upper hand over educational content. Part 2 of that, whenever that comes out, will be more focused on, the actual content, and it'll be more focused on some more serious thoughts about the whole issue of unschooling. But yeah, Backrooms. Okay, so I came into this movie having not seen or read that much of the, lore around it, or much of the material that's out there. Played the Pool Rooms game, which is just kind of more of a, it's more about the ambiance. Raises more questions than answers. And I've seen some of the classic backroom videos. I've always been intrigued by them, but I've never really gone down any sort of backrooms rabbit hole. Although I do find it fascinating. Alright, so that's kind of how I came into this movie. So I didn't really have any expectations on how they should have gone about it or what have you. Okay, it's going to be very brief, so just my overall ideas on what I think the movie was going for. Obviously, this is only for people that have already seen the movie. Spoiler alert should be obvious. The main character is this kind of very troubled furniture store owner. And we meet him when he's doing a therapy session with his therapist. And what they like to do is a role play. And they like to recreate the moment that his wife left him. That guy really looked at me creepily. Anyway, yeah, they play out this scene so we kind of get to learn a bit more about what happened through this. And one thing that you immediately notice is that he's very into this. The emotions, which the anger, is still very much at the surface for him, because he really gets into that role play, man. He's right back in that evening. And then he says something about he hurts people, and that's just the way he's wired. And so obviously this guy has some issues, and then on top of that, his furniture store is not going too well. All right, the building's really crappy, ridden with all kinds of problems. The electricity's messed up, and there's a possible rat infestation. We have this character. He discovers an entrance to the back rooms in his basement, and he's a really tragic figure. He sleeps in his own store because he literally lost his house. And he's sleeping on one of the things that he has up for sale, and it's just a sad ordeal. We don't know much about the character's background, but we can't help but feel bad for him, just seeing how he's going through life at the store. Again, the store is I think he's already bankrupt. Is on the verge of bankruptcy. It's a mess. That's what it is. The first room that he discovers has a whole pile of furniture in it, just piled up. It's a pretty big, significant pile, and it really marks this area in the back rooms too. It makes that room very recognizable, which is good for him because he needs to find his way back out pretty quickly. So at least he knows. At least he can recognize the room where the portal is. Anyway, I just want to quickly throw my thoughts out on what I make of the concept, and I might do a more in-depth video at some point, if I feel like I have anything interesting to add to this discussion. But for now, I want to pinpoint my thoughts that I have so I can, uncontaminated. So I'm gonna get a lot of stuff wrong, or people, haven't thought it through enough, whatever. Okay, so the Backrooms appear to be a copy of our reality, and it's a physical space that has objects from our physical reality. And it is also explained that they're based on our memories, so it seems to draw much more from mental energy or what have you than any physical memory. So it has a pretty direct connection to people's minds in this reality, and vice versa. The Backrooms can reveal things about our unconsciousness. It's manifested in a physical room, and besides objects, these rooms also have entities. Now, the entities. This is what I said during the break of the movie to the people I was seeing. I said, I think the entities are based on people's traumas or mental, or like their significant or painful memories, and they kind of manifest as these entities that are that trauma or that memory, like it's like frozen in that moment, confined in that moment, and is able to act like a physical being, basically. That was pretty much confirmed after the break in the movie itself. And so the big entity in this movie is the main character himself. I've actually reached a point where I don't know if the main character's name was Clark or Craig. I can look that up, actually. Okay, I looked it up. It is Clark, indeed. It's Clark in the pirate suit that he wears in his slightly embarrassing commercial for his furniture store. It's kind of a comical scene where we see an outtake from this commercial where he reaches the kind of like the big moment in the advertisement where he sits down on the chair, and it immediately cracks. One of the legs gives in. He swears and he falls through the chair. And this chair actually manifests in a giant form in the Backrooms as well. That very same chair, or a version of that chair, but much bigger. And the parrot that he wears on his shoulders also in that room. I think that moment that we see that chair, the fact that he discovers that chair, is kind of like foreshadowing that's a significant thing in his psyche, that moment of falling through the chair. And that is later, like, it's kind of foreshadowing the fact that we are gonna see a monstrous version of Clark as the commercial pirate, which we indeed do. And it's also foreshadowed in the drawing on the wall. Again, I need to see that drawing on the wall again. There was text there, something about how can chairs bleed. I'm gonna have to see it again. Again, I haven't looked up anything since, so I just remember it depicted the pirate Clark as this massive shadowy form, very, very ominous, and it was consuming a little figure, which was also foreshadowing another scene. That's where the movie kind of lost me. I thought it was kind of weird that Clark, first of all, there was a random guy with a striped shirt that I don't think connected to him in any way. He put it in this version of his house. I didn't really understand why he enjoyed eating them. That whole eating part, I have no idea what that was about. The fact that you could eat these things and they were kind of like marshmallowy inside. No idea why they made those things edible. Then Clark actually seems to have... Okay, so Clark really enjoys these back rooms. And he says that, he likes the fact that, the entities there, they just exist like furniture. And I think this is the key point. I think the key idea of this movie is Clark's reaction to the backrooms, which is kind of mirrored by the scientist at the end of the movie, at the very end of the movie. That is to say, Clark becomes completely obsessed with the backrooms. And considering that the backrooms kind of are built from the worst parts of us, or the saddest parts of us, of our trauma, and the fact that he kind of revels in that whole idea of his trauma manifested as a physical space. To me, it says that this character is completely obsessed with his sense of being a victim, and woe is me, poor me, everyone screwed me over. And let's not forget, it is mentioned a lot of times in that angry moment. He says, "I am an architect." So he wanted to be an architect, which is also significant because, of course, well, we see him make drawings of the back room, so of course he would have that skill. But it would also explain his fascination with design and the back rooms as a building themselves, because he has these aspirations to be an architect. Architect typically creates spaces, thinks about rooms and how to build rooms. So that makes sense. And it makes sense that he's a failed architect. He's not successful at this. Okay, I don't want to miss out on this thing that actually in conversation with my girlfriend after the movie, I had completely forgotten about this scene. There's a scene where one of the stoner chicks can be heard calling out for help. And Clark is in this pool type room and he can hear her, but he can't see her. She's surprised about that because she says she's behind glass. I didn't know what to make of it. My girlfriend suggested that she felt that scene symbolizes Carl's, the mental issues that he has. He's trapped in his way of life because he can't see where others can see him. The stoner chick can see him, but he can't see her. And he was very determined, like, I'll figure this out. Don't worry. And he's feeling the wall. He's feeling the wall over. I think that desperate attempt to see through a solid wall basically symbolizes the tragedy of that whole character. He's just hopeless. He doesn't want to reflect critically on himself, so he can't see. He can't see where others can see. Yeah, the end. We meet this scientist dude, the MRI scientist guy. He's an older fella. He seems to have been fascinated with the backrooms for a long time. Yeah, this is what I make of that. That guy, he started an MRI company, and MRIs, of course, make images of the brain. I think this character is obsessed with understanding the human mind. He wants to map it all out, basically. Now, of course, the human mind is so endlessly complex that's an impossible task. You're never going to map out the human psyche in its entirety. But he's fascinated with it, and the MRIs are kind of like an attempt for him to capture it in an image so that you can, you kind of turn it into a map, but it's really not the real thing at all. It's just the image of a brain. That doesn't really say that much about the mind. So, of course, when this character discovers the back rooms, which are, in fact, reflections of the mind are kind of like, they're kind of like MRI scans turned, they're kind of like mental scans turned into physical rooms. That's what might be the best way to describe the idea. It's no wonder that he became completely obsessed with going into the back rooms and finding out as much as he could. And that's what he says in that scene, like, if we can only discover a little bit more. Yeah, that is obsession personified. He's trying to, we know the back rooms are endless, so him wanting to know a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Let's see what's in the next room. Let's see if we can make more sense of. But you know, the back rooms are endless, so it's a completely trivial pursuit. You're never gonna discover anything meaningful out of it. But that is his obsession, and he's somehow being puppeteered by these unknown entities. He's looking at this. Well, they're kind of like the screens you have in an interrogation room where you can't really see who's behind them. Again, there's a wall that only has, the one-way vision. Yeah, who knows what could be behind that window. Maybe it's very obvious. Maybe I missed something there, but I believe that part was kept pretty mysterious. I mean, I know that he is somehow connected to government, but I think it's pretty clear that there's another top-down entity involved in the whole thing that we haven't seen much of yet. So maybe there's gonna be Backrooms too. Yeah. So in conclusion, Backrooms. I think the takeaways that it's a Clark, as well as that professor they have an unhealthy reaction to discovering the Backrooms. The Backrooms should horrify us. We should not want to go in there. We should stay away from the Backrooms. Anyone who finds the Backrooms, the normal reaction would be to find the way out as fast as you can. But these two characters, they love it, man. Something about them. Yeah, they want to keep coming back into them. Now, Clark, of course, his reality kind of sucks. So he doesn't have much else. And on top of that, everything that he's angry about and that he's bitter about is personified in the Backrooms. And he enjoys his bitterment, and he's always the victim, and he's like, at least in the Backrooms, that's his whole world, basically. Oh. Yeah, so I think it's a movie about our subconsciousness, the Backrooms of our minds, how we are fascinated by our unconsciousness, how some people are either obsessed with figuring out the human psyche, or they are in love with their own sorrow, like Clark. And they've put it in kind of a very interesting horror movie, psychological horror movie. Of course, I have thoughts about how they actually executed that, and the whole thing with where monsters always have to eat you for some reason, or there's also always something with eating, and the chasing scenes, and the fact that something's chasing you isn't necessarily like that's always the scare. But anyway, I'll get into that in a different video. But these are kind of my 2 cents at this moment. Yeah. Now I'm actually gonna read what other people say and see that this was all nonsense. Thank you.